love to be there one day. Philly. My goodness. Now we're still waiting on Dan. So we can talk about different things. When Dan joins us, we'll talk more about the group and everything. But I guess now we have that situation where everybody's joining us, and we have a chance to get to know everybody. I love the fact that from Scotland, I think people are starting to make up things. Cape Coral, Bay Area. Wow, fantastic. It's like 4 o'clock in the morning in the Bay Area. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe my math is a little bit off. So and the whole thing, everybody's from everybody, and I'm from my garage. So imagine. What do we want to see? You know what? Let's ask the question that we've always wanted to know as Dan joins us in just a second. It's up to you guys. This group is public. It's available, and we thank you very much. We don't exist without you and the rest of the group that's joining us here. Even more people are coming in. I love that. So tell us in the chat. Turn on your audio, please. Until Dan joins us and we start the Q&A sessions, we'd love to hear more about you. And I'll have a link in a minute to a way you can officially let us know. But what are you interested in learning? What are you interested in hearing about? And even like Jeremy says, what are you interested in presenting?
I just want to, Damien, I want to give a shout out on this call. We've got Ernie, who's a code school teacher, Michelle, who's a code school teacher, Steve, who's starting in a week as a code school teacher, me and Jonathan, who are code school teachers. So any other code school teachers on the call?
Yes, Todd. I'm also a code school teacher. I do teach at Miami-Dade College, and I do have a very interesting question for Dan. So I would like actually to ask about Redux and Redux Toolkit, because Redux Toolkit came with a lot of changes and looks like very interesting, not using boilerplate, but still it seems that a lot of people would prefer using Redux instead of the Toolkit version. And I would like to know from him what he thinks that is the best usage of Redux, and what would he use, or his what he thinks about it using Redux or Redux Toolkit.
So it's a fantastic question. We will be able to ask certain questions at the very end of the presentation. I want to share with you, who was that just asked that question one more time?
My name is Joao. I'm currently living in the Bay Area, but in the past 2 years I was in Miami. I just moved here because I can work remote and I do have family here.
It is a wonderful place to do that. Good choice, Joao. One of the things that I can let you know as Dan joins us, again, I believe Dan hasn't joined us yet. I'm just trying to keep up with everybody with the audio and the video that we show up on YouTube and on Facebook and on Twitch. I can let you know that the answer that we normally get from Dan for those questions, and he's been asked this before, is that he'll remind us that he is not part of the Redux group, although he was one of the original creators. He's not part of it, and so the most recent changes will be something that he will let us know right away. Will be that he's not, he's not the best to ask those questions. So hopefully that will answer that question, even because you'll get the same answer from him. So we should be able to be a little respectful for him in saying, I mean, it's not that it's going to bother him, but he'll probably tell you that answer, and he's not doing it for anything else other than to be polite and let you know that, it is something that he doesn't all the time know about more.
I see.
So he'll be able to answer that question. Again, just making sure. I didn't have the screen up all the way, so I wasn't seeing all the people that have joined the call. So let's see. So I mean, definitely added. Oh, maybe this is a good time to showcase the slides where you can add questions. But feel free to also. I mean, we'll take that, Joel, that question, and again. I'll start it up as to figure out exactly, does he want to talk about it? Does he want to put some information forward as far as any Redux questions? But like I said, even though he's created it, he's one of the original creators, I believe he'll answer the question that he has at other interviews, which is, not the best person because he's no longer part of that team.
Thank you.
A pleasure. So I guess we can start talking a little bit about it. We'll sort of get sort of the day-to-day out. I'm going to go ahead and put the screen back up, and we'll sort of hide ourselves in sort of the corner. This you guys won't see. Really, is what I'm talking about is more about the future. So let me just do that. All right. So we're going to be today to Q&A with Dan and Abram. My name is Damien Montero. We'll talk more about who I am, who Jeremy is, who Jamie is, Jeannie is in just a minute. I just want you guys to all see it. Just the basics. We're using Zoom. Again, Dan should join us in just a minute. I don't see him just yet. Please interrupt me if you do see him and where I do not. Perhaps he's on the second page of the chat. Oh my, we do have a lot of people. So, my goodness. Wasn't even prepared for that. I'll make sure to keep up to date with the chat. Dan, are you with us today? With the number of people that we have here, it is hard for me to see if we have everybody here.
I don't think he is. I'm searching through the names.
Thank you, my friend. So you keep up to date with that. My name is Damien Montero. We are FloridaJS. Thank you all for joining us. The second Dan comes on, Jeremy will let me know, and then we'll sort of switch into that. Since it is 10 past the hour, and we were going to have the meeting at 12, I'll go through the basics and the presentation of who we are. Should you be interested in anything that I have in this presentation, including the questions or any of the links you can see in just a minute, make sure to go to slides.floridajs or groupsname.com, and you'll be able to see the same slides as I do. You will not be able to, when I move forward in the slides, it will not move over for you, but at least you'll be able to see the links that I'm talking about. All right, what about us? You know what I mean? If you haven't joined us, and thank you if you joined us from other groups, we'll refer to them in just a minute. But in this particular case, the group is FloridaJS. We are at meetup.com/FloridaJS. We meet the first and the last Tuesday of every month, and in special occasions, we will meet on other days. This is a special, very special occasion with Dan joining us in just a minute. But what you need to know is sometimes we will have meetings that are not the first or the last of the month as we've been having. Why are we called FloridaJS? We're a group that has joined. It's 3 different groups. It's the Palm Beach JavaScript group that Jeremy runs, the Boca.js group that I used to run, and the React Fort Lauderdale group that Jeannie used to run. Jeannie Ramos can be joined at the Slack channel that we're talking about in just a minute. I can also be found there as simply my first name, Damien, and Jeremy can be joined as his fantastic nickname, Jermbo. He can also be joined on Twitter and GitHub professionally as the same name. Apparently, I've decided to have multiple versions of myself at Twitter and GitHub. It is all me. Just Google Damien. You'll be able to find. Thank you very much. Like Todd reminded us, we are joined by several other groups. Thank you very much, Ernie, for having the Frontend Miami group, I believe, come join us. They're at frontend.miami. Do join them. If you are coming from that group, thank you for joining us. I really appreciate it. If you're coming from the Miami JS group, one of the oldest groups here with JS in Florida, thank you, Christina, for putting us up in your group and just reminding everybody to definitely join us. Thanks for the great students and everybody at Boca Code. If you do want to know anything about front-end programming, JavaScript programming, anything like that, do join them. They're not a sponsor, but I'm a big fan, so I can say that. You can find more about them at bocacode.com. Okay, talking about bocacode.com and the upcoming events for FloridaJS, our next event will be the 2nd of February, again, the first Tuesday of the month. That will be at Mr. Don, the main presenter, the main teacher there, one of the main teachers there, Dr. Todd Albert, a man so smart he needed 2 first names. I don't know what his last name is. I guess it's Albert. From Boca Code, be doing Power Twilio. Now, just to be clear, it is I who creates his title. So if he changes that, just let me know. You can meet us at the same place you meet us here, which is meet.floridajs.com, which redirected to Zoom, as you are right now seeing it, and we appreciate that. After that, on February 23rd, we have Ivan Bliskova, and he will be, I don't know if Ivan is here. but he will be presenting the AWS workshop that a lot of you have been asking for. It is something that really revolutionizes. It'll show you what you can do. It is going to be a 1-hour presentation, so don't worry about sort of spending the whole weekend with us. It is just simply a Tuesday. Both of them are at the regular 6:30 that we normally do this. And again, it'll be at meet.floridajs.com, or just go to floridajs.com for more information about that. If you have any questions about this, do ask them in the chat and I will answer them for us. Just a reminder, this is Danny Montero. We're joined by Jeremy and Jeannie should be on the line soon enough. We're asking for information about what you guys are interested, what the group here is interested in us seeing and presenting. We'll be presenting, and feel free to come to survey.floridajs.com. Just tap in on your website. Don't worry about the spaces. No spaces required. Survey.floridajs.com. Fill it in. Anything that you decide will be a good idea, especially if you want to present, and especially if you are knowledgeable. Even if you're not, we'd love to hear from you. One of the best ways to get knowledgeable about that is to present about something you are truly in love with, that you truly enjoy, and you'll see how that simply rolls off the tongue, and you'll have a great time with it. All right, Jeremy, you want to take this over, as this is one of your favorite things, and it's very enjoyable.
Yeah, just talking about the survey. Please do fill this out, because we're here for you. We're a community that wants to just hear about anything that's going on. It's a great way to give back to the community. So if you're learning something, you don't have to be an expert to come out and talk about it. Some of the talks that I've given have been because I heard about something and I wanted to get it out of the way. And having that communication is a really good thing to do, because someone might present a topic or reframe the question for you in a different way, or you might unblock somebody who's going through the same struggles you're having. So if you're not an expert in it and you find it fascinating, please do consider giving a talk about that. We want to have the range of conversations, from what it's like to experience this for the first time to senior devs who have been doing this for years. So Palm Beach Tech, for all of the new faces out there, is a nonprofit organization dedicated to turning the Palm Beaches into a tech hub. They have a Slack group. So if you go to the palmbeachtech.org/Slack and sign up, there's a bunch of very active channels in there. One of them that I'm most proud of is the developers channel. Damien and I are posting GIFs constantly. If you have a question about something, throw it up there. I guarantee you there's an expert or someone willing to help you out with that question you're having. Or if someone posts a question and you have the answer to it, feel free to give back and answer that questions for you. We have events going on all of the time. So it's not just the events with the FloridaJS, but anything happening in South Florida, that's the channel to check out. And if you are looking for a new gig, there's a channel for gigs hiring. Like Damien mentioned before, you can reach out to any one of us if you want to speak or if you just want to chat about something. I'm Jermbo, he's Damien, and Jeannie is the co-organizer here. The second thing is Code Palm Beach. We are a nonprofit organization dedicated to teaching kids to code. We host multiple events a month at various locations and online. We're always looking for new volunteers and open source contributors. So feel free to check out the website to learn more, or reach out to me or Michelle over there. She's on the board with me, and she's also found in the Slack channel. Next. And it looks like we have Dan on board. Hey, Dan, how you doing?
Hey, thanks for having me. Sorry I'm so late.
No, thank you for coming. No worries at all. So you are the main event. We just got through talking about some of the who we are, FloridaJS, what we're doing, and where we're going from here. So everybody's had an opportunity to ask some questions in the chat, but we do have some prepared questions for you. So would you like to first off introduce yourself for those of you who don't know who you are yet?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so my name is Dan. I'm a software engineer on the React team. So I work on React, I guess.
Okay.
Been cool. Around for a while. I don't know.
Yeah. All right, very cool. Dan, you want to go to the next slide, please?
Absolutely.
So I've broken these down, and hopefully we can tell just an overall narrative. And I want to start off with getting to know who you are and your personal history with React. How did you first get involved in it? Was this a tool you were using before and needed to work on it? Or did this just happen to be where you got placed when you joined Facebook?
Yeah. So I think I started using React in 2015 or maybe 14, yeah. Because I was at a small startup and we were building so we're building a web version of our product, and it had a really like dynamic UI, and I think we were initially using Backbone, but it was really hard to like make it do the things that we wanted it to do. And so my colleague showed React to me, and I thought it was silly at first. But like he showed it to me again like a couple months later, and I was like, okay, let's try to implement like a button in that thing. And it was actually really easy, and I liked it, and we started using it more, and we kind of rewrote the product with React like over the next months, while like still adding new features as we were doing it. And so that I felt really really good about it. And but it was still early on, like I think it was before like React Router existed. So it was early on, and we were like, for a bunch of things, there were just no React libraries that did the things that we needed. Like there was no like a drag and drop library, there was no router. And so like I was trying to learn and like just figure out how to build some of those things, just like because we needed them and like we needed to find some solution. And I guess like that's kind of how I started in like React open source community. It's just like publishing some of the stuff we built, just like because we had to build it. Yeah, and then I ended up at Facebook like after that, because our startup ran out of money, and I was already sort of visible in the ecosystem just because like we built a bunch of stuff. And I did a talk at React Europe 2015 about like some of the things I was interested in, and we just kind of did, because there were already like a bunch of Facebook speakers there. They just arranged kind of an ad hoc interview, and yeah, and I got in, and yeah, and I moved there. So that was like 5 years ago.
Very cool. So one of the follow-up questions I had to this was React a love at first sight? It sounded like the first time you saw it, it wasn't love at first sight, but then you saw it again. What changed your mind? Why did you learn to love it? What was that one feature?
Yeah, I think it was like, I mean, I didn't really have experience with like JavaScript libraries in general at that point, and I don't think I was very I think I just got fixated, like a lot of people in the beginning, on like JSX looks kind of weird, and like just didn't get it. But then like my colleague kind of said, no, like there is something there, like take another look. And I think that the part, like I remember it was like I was basically implemented like a like button, like for a product, and it had this thing where like if nobody liked it, then it just like says like. If somebody liked it, it says like this person liked it, or it says like this person and 2 other people liked it. So like it needed to show different things depending on like conditions, and just like being able to describe that in code and just return the result, and then like React would figure out how to actually like modify the DOM to fit that result. I think that was the point where I was like, oh, okay, this is exactly like what we needed for that use case.
Nice. Thank you. Next question, slide, Damien. So a lot of people have written back and asked the question, like getting more insight into the process of open source. So how does the React core team decide what features to prioritize and move forward with? I think a lot of people are very interested in that question.
Yeah. It's not a very easy question. I think there's like a bunch of considerations. So I think we have a person, Sebastian, who's kind of our like tech lead, and he's sort of a I don't know, visionary is a very serious word, but
Okay.
He's really good at, you know, like setting a long-term direction, I would say,
Okay.
and kind of API design. And so I think so like in general, the process is we hear about the, like we know some of the problems that like we ran into when we were using React. Like pretty much, I think everyone on the team has used React before, like working on it. So like we have some thoughts about like what some problems are that people run into as they build applications.
Okay.
And then we do hear a lot from like, you know, internal usage about like what are the things people are running into that aren't solved very well. And also like obviously from open source, there's even more feedback from like what are the things that people are looking for. And in many cases, this is being phrased as feature requests. Sorry, one so in many cases, they are phrased as feature requests, like here's like a thing we want you to add. And we try to resist the temptation to do that because often like there's a like these are symptoms, but the root problem is different, and we don't want to fix the symptoms, we want to solve the root problem. And so in some cases, this means like saying no to things that like everybody expects, like, oh, just add this like small animation helper, or oh, just add this like small like data fetching utility.
That makes sense.
Something like this. But there's actually like, we take the long-term approach where we want to solve something like really kind of deeply. And so we take a step back and we deprioritize a lot of things we want to work on, because like some other things are not ready that would be like a foundation for it.
Yeah.
But I guess that's the approach, is that there's like a long-term vision for where we want to take React, and there's multiple big pieces of that vision, and we try to fill it in as it goes. And we do like take a lot of feedback on what are the things that people want to see, but it's we try to translate that into like a foundational thing, and not just like fixing symptoms.
Would you say that the reason for React 17's release is fixing foundational stuff instead of what people wanted? Because a lot of people have given a criticism of like not having any new features, but it sounds like there's foundational stuff that you're solving.
Yeah, so I think 17 is actually like the least interesting release in that sense. So it's I mean, I think like from my, maybe like my perspective is biased. I actually saw a lot of people appreciate that it's a very kind of non-break-in release. But
Agreed.
I think his biggest point is just prepare us for the future where we can make more aggressive changes. But we did want to fix this problem that you can't update React in a part of your app because then like events would not work. And so, yeah, I guess this, you could kind of see it like that, but it's also just like fixing some mistakes we've made in like 2014.
Right.
So I think like React 17 by itself is not very interesting in that sense.
Okay, very cool. Next question, Damien. So along the same thought process, right? What is your release process? What kind of testing and preparation goes into the next version?
Yeah, so we, I think like versions are important in open source, obviously. Like internally, we just run what's on the main branch. So we don't have this process where we just merge a bunch of changes and then like half a year later we're trying to like release them. It's like for us, testing is continuous, and like every week basically we sync what's on main, and like that's what like Facebook products run. So that's how we find most of the issues. It's just we have an extensive product test suite internally. So like if our open source test suite did not catch something, it's likely going to be caught in some like product test. Or it's like if, you know, like if we have a bug, like if like I don't know, the number of comments goes down after like a React release, it's obvious we messed it up. So like we try to fix those problems, and so I think that like catches the majority of the issues. And then the open source releases are just about like what is a good cut-in point where we feel like we have a good story about what's included there, where like the update itself makes sense, where like we have a blog post, we have documentation for all the things in that. So I think that's mostly how like a release is just like telling a story about those particular changes. But I do want to say that like this, it sometimes because of this like scale, it's like we do need to be very like intentionally careful about what we release. So as an example, like we were recently doing a refactoring that we need to like implement some features. We need to refactor the core. And so we had this refactoring, and we did an experiment on Facebook, and there were like a bunch of metrics that went down by like 1% or like 2%. And that may not sound like a lot, but it's actually like huge. Like a 1% regression means that it's like we really messed something up. And it took us like, I think 2 months to find the code. And it was just like 2 lines of code. But it took us like 2 months to actually nail it down. Yeah, I know, right? And it was also like at first we tried to guess it, and like we fixed a bunch of like unrelated things, and like then we tried to like bisect it and then only like split the change apart into smaller changes and like land them one by one. And like at some point it was just a combination of like there was a small enough commit and somebody just had a random guess, and like they verified it, and actually that was the cause. And then we saw that the result was positive. But that's just an example of like if you don't have this kind of testing ground, you can move a lot faster, but then you make those mistakes that like maybe it would take like a year in open source to get, like if somebody had the same problem, they wouldn't be able to debug it, and we wouldn't be able to debug the website. So yeah, it's a lot of responsibility, I think.
So you brought up an interesting number, like a 1%, 2% drop, and that's huge for Facebook. What is an acceptable threshold for you when you push something out for Facebook? Is it like 0.1%? Less than that?
It depends. I think like maybe less than 0.1 would be okay. But I think it really depends on, like, ideally nothing. Ideally it should be positive and not like negative. But it could be like a trade if we understand why it's regressing and it's something that we're comfortable with, then like we could make a case for it. But if we don't understand why, it means there's a deeper problem that like we need to understand first.
Very good. Understood. Thank you. Next question, please, Damien. So this section I titled Win Big, Miss Big. Looking back at the history of React, what would you consider some of the biggest wins, or what would you consider the biggest miss? Things that I thought of when thinking about this would be the switching of the license, or adding suspense, like a feature too quickly. But some of the wins are like the docs and the addition of hooks. So do you have any insight from your perspective? Like what are some of the biggest wins and some of the biggest misses from React?
Yeah. I think hooks are pretty big. I mean, they have their words. It's not like a perfect thing. And I know like some people really don't like them, but I think like I'm very happy that different people, like that there was this chain of events that like kind of accidentally led to this design being discovered. I think it was a very like it unlocked so many more other things. I think the React 16 rewrite is very successful, despite the common wisdom that you're like all rewrites fail, or like the second system syndrome, and that like it's like it's hard to rewrite and actually like not regress on a bunch of things. I think we just did a really good job there, like because it was like effectively a ground up rewrite for most of the engine, and it just unlocked. And I mean, we're now that like we've learned a bunch of stuff, but it just unlocked so many more opportunities. I think the like actually React 17, even though it's uneventful, not intentional, it's like uneventful for most developers because it's like it just changes how events are wired up under the hood. But I think like that work was, I'm so happy that we fixed it because it was it's just something that like people ran into it since the release, and it was like it solved like I closed like maybe like a dozen issues or more that were like very hard to fix, and I could just like press the button, this is now solved. And that was very nice. And in terms of like biggest misses, I think it's hard to say because like you don't like I don't know how it would have been different, but I think like Create React App being a client only thing was a like I don't know how it could have been different. Like I guess like something like Next.js is like an example of how it could have been different. And it was an intentional decision not to have a server part to it because we just didn't have we didn't have server components back then, or even like we weren't even thinking about something like this back then. But it seems like a loss that so many people are using it to create like what should have really been a server driven or a statically generated website, but they just use Create React App because that's like the official thing. And so like we need to figure out the way forward how to shift that. So I think that's maybe a miss.
Yeah, I can understand what you're saying. Like it's a miss in the sense of we didn't know what we knew today, back then.
Yeah.
Other things have come in to fill in that gap with, you said Next.js. So I get what you're saying.
Yeah. I don't know that I agree about like suspense. Like suspense is hard to talk about because it's like so many different things, and like there's the stable suspense API for code splitting that like people use all over the place, like lazy and suspense, and that works perfectly fine. So it's I wouldn't say that is a miss. But then you say like release in suspense, and we did not release like suspense for anything else. It's not released. Right. So it's I think, but there is this like idea that like we talked about something like 2 years ago or like 3 years ago, and we thought that it would be out by the end of the year, and then it kind of kept snowballing. And I think the miss there is really in the communication, and in particular I think we kind of talked about it more as a product announcement, whereas we should have been talking about it more as a research project. And it's uncommon for the React ecosystem, like for JavaScript ecosystem, I think like multi-year timelines are weird to people. They're like, it means that it'll never ship. But like if you look at other programming communities where the cycle is slower, it's common to have multi-year projects for like a new version of a language or like a reworking of the architecture of some libraries. So it's not exactly unheard of. So I think in this case, we should have communicated that we don't have a specific deadline. It's not something that like you should worry about as a component author yet, but we do embark on this multi-year journey that we think is foundational and important, but like you're gonna need some patience to actually wait for it to complete.
Very good. Thank you for that. Next question, Damien. So I've taken a deep dive in watching a whole bunch of interviews and talks that you've given the past couple of days, and I noticed you have given a talk a couple of times about the future of React. Are there any predictions you made in hindsight that didn't come true? And is there anything that you didn't forming into React that is now in React?
Well, like I think that touches on like the things we just discussed. Like I think like hooks is an example of something I did not expect that like Sebastian would would have solved. Like, it was just not obvious. It kind of caught us by surprise, because we just ran into some problems in different places, and then like this solution came together, whereas I thought that it would take, like, I don't know, another 3 years or more to figure out what the API should be. That was a nice surprise. Whereas, like, again, like anything where we say, oh, we think like this thing is gonna ship by this date, like that hasn't worked out historically.
It's almost a guarantee to make sure it's not going to happen is put a date on it, right?
Yeah. I think I would have expected, like a few years earlier, I would have expected that there would be more progress on kind of cross-platform, like, like something like React Native for web would maybe be official or something like this. And I don't think we're quite there yet.
Okay.
I do think that I anticipate, like, I did anticipate the, like, I wrote an article about, like, before fast refresh was a thing, but I was like experimenting with similar approaches for like several years before. And I did mention, like, in one of the articles about it, that, oh, it would be really nice if we had a this like more declarative kind of API, like instead of classes, that would allow us certain things. So it kind of hints at hooks, but like that's also because I read proposals that were like pre-hooks for functional stateful components.
Okay.
I don't think I really predicted anything myself.
Okay. Well, Damien, if you go to the next question, I'm going to put you on the spot. Can you make any predictions about 2021? Is there anything that you foresee coming, either from the community, from React itself, or just in general? You know, looking into your crystal ball, I know it's kind of hard, but I'm sure there's signs of the times and something that might be hinted towards.
Yeah, I mean, it's not exact, like I can think of like our roadmap and like what we're interested in. And I think like for us, so we just like announced server components a few weeks ago, and I do think there would be a like more kind of emphasis and interest in the server story over this year, both from like we are exploring this, and like Next.js will be exploring this more, even though they're kind of pioneering some of the stuff, but also like in the broader community. So I think that's like one point. I do hope that we'll make some progress that like we're planning to make. Again, no specific dates, but I think there's like we'll further refine the things that we've been working on for a long time.
Okay.
Hopefully be able to share some of that. But
Very
yeah,
cool.
that's it.
Yeah, I know prediction's a little hard, and I kind of put you on the spot with that one, but thank you for that. Next question, please, Damien. So I've gotten a lot of feedback from various community members, and the overall sentiment is boiled down into this next question. Misuse or misunderstood. Is there a feature you often see misused or is just generally misunderstood? What is that feature, and how can we better understand the concept? Like, I'm sure you get field a lot of questions about things, and is there a common theme that you get over and over again that one of your talks, you know, solves or answers or addresses?
So I guess like one way you could interpret this question is like, again, the meta problem of like us working on some things that are still experimental, but like maybe we talked about them, and now like people are maybe kind of feeling anxious about them because they're like we didn't fully explain what they are, or like the thinking about them has changed since the original talks. But if we pretend that like experimental features don't exist, which I think is fair, because like you shouldn't use them if they're not in a stable release. I think I guess I think we still haven't really explained like function components with hooks very well, because our docs, like the initial documentation was targeting people, and like the one that you still see now, right? It's targeting people who already know classes, and it makes comparisons with classes. And we never really tried to explain them from kind of first principle perspective. Like if you've never learned classes, how do you learn hooks and function components? And I think the fact that we kind of tied them together, the classes, just to help people bridge that, like the old and the new world, I think that also introduced some misconceptions where people feel like they correspond to each other too closely. And like that's like a misconception. Like when people see like a function component code and their mental model is like, oh, there's like event handlers inside are like methods, and that they're like this same function. It's like when you like when you set the state, like their mental model is like, oh, it's just like this part re-executes, but it's really the whole thing that re-executes. And I think just like teaching more like this mental model of how to think about React components as functions that just like re-execute every time. And that includes like your event handlers are new every time. The thing inside your effect, it's like, it's not like a mount or like update. It's like the thing you put there is part of your render output. It's like, it's different every time. I think just like untangling hooks and functions from this class mental model that people already have. I think that's like a misunderstood aspect that I think we should be able to address it better with like we're trying to rewrite some docs. So hopefully there's something we can solve in the longer run.
All right, thank you. I know that's personally an area of confusion for me, because the way you described it as like the use effect is the thing that gets rerun, which is not 100% accurate. It's the whole thing that gets rerun, which is why you have to pass in the array of dependencies. That was that took me some mind bending to get around. Thank you.
Yeah, and I think like use effect is kind of the poster child for, oh, this is so confusing. And the reason is like, yeah, it is quirky and confusing, because it's like, it's this place that bridges two different worlds. It's like this window from the React world where you just return things into this imperative world where you like do things. And if you like, it kind of forces you to get it right from the beginning. Whereas like with classes, you can like, it's easy to write code that handles only a subset of cases. And so you get started really quickly, but then like you're going to have race conditions and cases where the output is inconsistent with your props and stuff like this. And like you gradually have to fix it, but you don't discover all the problems at once. Whereas use effect is like, no, solve all of them first, and then it's going to work. And like it forces you to fix the edge cases as part of your like initial flow, and that can be disorienting. But the reason I'm not super worried about it is it's kind of meant as an escape hatch, and it just happens that we use it a lot because we don't have better primitives. So like, why do people use it? It's like data fetching, animations, and like there's like a bunch of those use cases that really need the first class solution that is not a use effect. And then once you have those solutions, then you're just going to have use effect in like very rare cases where it actually makes sense. But we're now in this weird transitional period where you have to use it everywhere, but it's kind of not designed for that. And then the things that are really designed for those cases are not ready yet.
Okay, very cool. Thank you for clarifying that. Next question, please, Damien. So we all know the realm of front-end tooling, right? We got React, Angular, Vue, Svelte, etc. And hearing these talks about how everybody is talking to each other and just sharing ideas, is there a feature that you see in another framework that React doesn't have that you would like to see in React?
Yeah, I think there's it'd be nice to have a built-in like animation support, but not in the way that other libraries do it. So we do have some opinions about how it should be done and like how to make it composable. So it's like the fact that other libraries do have like first class support for it is something that I think we lag behind there, but we want to do it differently. I think another example is like the like using compilation more, but it's a double-edged sword. Like I think a lot of people like a lot of people think, oh, it's just like you add a compiler and then that makes everything so much better, and like the library disappears and
I've seen your back and forth tweets with Rich and on is the compilation a good idea or not?
Yeah, I don't do much of that anymore on Twitter because it never ends well. But I think like it's a set of trade-offs, and it's like the case that this particular thing is optimizing for is some apps have benefit a lot from that. And like some apps, like in some apps, it might actually be worse because you end up like each component ends up being larger because it contains both the code for like updates and for creation of things. And so our solution to a lot of those problems is actually not like making the code run faster, but removing the code altogether. So this is like the server components idea. It's like the opposite of compilation, right? It's like not the compiler deciding something for you, but it gives you control to not ship some code to the client at all and do that rendering on the server. And then on the client, it's just the stuff that's like actually interactive. So I think like for some problems, we just have a completely different like approach and solution. But still, like there are cases where like something is completely client side and you really have this like update that like goes all the way down to some pieces, and like they need to update really fast, and so you have this like tree, like you want to propagate it update faster, and like React does not have very good defaults for that use case. But it's not that it's incapable, and I think like we could like stay in the React paradigm, but we could have a compiler that automatically does memoization for you. So that will be like a thing that transforms your components so that the parts that like haven't changed don't get like reevaluated. If you have an update without like manually optimizing everything. So this is something that we will kind of get back to probably, but again, it's a different, we're not going to copy the same approach because our model is different, and we intentionally don't want to use the same approach as like Svelte or Vue does, because that locks us out of other features we care about. And so we really want to have it all. So it takes some time, and we structure it differently. But I think like overall the just it is inspiring that like they solve more stuff like out of the box, even if we don't always agree with solutions. And I think we'd like to be doing more of that as well.
Yeah, very cool. I think the idea is the end results seems to be widely agreed upon. It's the implementation is radically different between each framework. That makes sense.
And I think like in part it's also because it's not that like it's not only like a matter of taste or something like this, but it's just that there are different ways, fundamentally different ways you could build a UI library. And each big UI library is kind of exploring with the trade-offs it chooses in the beginning, what can you build around those trade-offs? And so that's why it doesn't make sense to like copy approaches from other libraries, because they're not compatible. What you really want to is like staying true to the trade-offs you picked. How much can you push it forward? Like what is the logical conclusion of that approach? And so React is never gonna like feel like Vue or like feel like Svelte, and that's not the That's not the point. The point is to explore what the best React could be for us.
Agreed. And I don't think I like the idea of each framework feeling like the other framework. I like the React flavor for React specific reasons. I like Vue for Vue specific reasons. So yeah, I appreciate that. And this leads up into our next question very nicely. Talking about feature sets, is there a feature you would like to add to React but can't due to certain limitations in JavaScript itself?
Yeah, that would be tricky for me to answer because it's usually Sebastian thinking on that kind of level.
Okay.
I think it would have been, it's not exactly a feature, but I think one of the challenges with writing in React paradigm is that it is a bit of a meta language in that like a component is a function, but it is a function that is like kind of has its own like you can use hooks, right? And like hooks they almost feel like syntax. Like there's a reason why they all start with like use. It's almost like a keyword. And some people take it to say, oh, React is not just JavaScript. And I don't know exactly what it means because no, it is like it is built on JavaScript, right. But it does have a set of meta, like almost language level concerns. It's like a virtual machine on top of a language. And you could say the same for like some other libraries where like Svelte is also pretty opinionated about how the things run. But I think like one thing that's missing is that in React, the notion of kind of purity is important. In that, like basically we expect that we can call your component at any time with any data, and that's not gonna like affect anything else. It's just supposed to like give back the result. But sometimes it's like usually like people who are familiar with React, they notice immediately when you like start like mutating something during render, but some of the patterns are kind of subtle. And so if we had some kind of compiler or like language level enforcement for that like if you mutate something you're not supposed to, bam, like you have a compile error. I think that would have been valuable to us. I don't know, maybe in 15 years we'll have something like this in JavaScript, maybe not.
Interesting. Very cool. Yeah, next question, please, Damien. So we've been hearing a lot of buzz around ESM support, the modules, and some of the cool work that Evan is doing with Vite. And with the support being more and more in the browser for ESM, does React have anything in store for future versions to harness the power?
I don't really know what the power is here. If you're talking about the Vite thing, I think it's if I understand correctly, it's like an alternative to a bundler or something that's it's basically about your application code, right? It's not like, I think it even works with React. So it's not really it's not really a React's. It seems like if we had a conversation with like Tobias from Webpack, or like they would probably be the person to say like what they think about this. But from like React core perspective, it's completely separate question, like whether you want to use a bundler and like get the benefits from that, or you want to use some different mechanism like that. It seems like either of those could work. As for like shipping React itself as an ESM module, again, I'm not sure I understand why people are excited by this idea. I don't know what it solves that like is not solved today. But for people who are excited, yes, like that's something we do want to do, just to consolidate. But it's actually really hard to do in a way that doesn't break everything. And so it is it's going to be like a major version. And the hardest thing is just there's so much ecosystem churn, and so it's like there's so many opportunities for breakage, especially if you have to support both ESM and CommonJS at the same time.
Right.
So it's likely that if we do kind of go ASM, we'll go ASM only, which would be a huge breaking change for people. And like everybody will have to like adjust their workflows and like convert their app code to ASM as well. So it's something we want to do. I don't know why people are excited about it. And it's also going to be like a world of pain for some temporary period for like the integrators and like tooling authors. But we do want to get there just like everybody else.
Thank you for that. It's insightful because I'm a little confused as to the hype train as well, because it's the question of like, what is it solving that's not already solved? And I haven't quite understood the bigger picture of like why this is better. I get why we're moving in that direction, you know, CommonJS versus ESM, but you know, I do agree with you in the sense that there's going to be a rough transition period, you know, from
I think
there's the future.
There's like a difference between like, I think it's just confusing to talk about because like I would talk about the ESM as a source format. I think everyone like agrees on that. Are we talking about it as a output format? Is it like output format for dev or for production? Like what are the benefits? And I think for a lot of people, what I'm hearing is the benefit is just you don't have to wait for Webpack to finish because Webpack is slow. And like that's not an inherent problem with like the output format. So I think a lot of it just has to do with the state of tooling today. But like as an example, again, like with like we're moving towards direction of using bundlers for more things, right? And like getting out more of them, such as like with server components, like we use the bundler to be able to like automatically have code splitting with zero like you don't have to do anything as a developer for it to work. It just automatically splits all of your client code. And like you do need the bundler for that to work. That's not something browser does.
Right.
Or like for production, you do need a bundler because, but that's, I think Vite also has a bundler for production. But then you have like two completely different ways of doing things for prod and dev, which is also like, I don't know how well that works.
Understood.
We'll see.
And you started touching on my next question. Damien, next slide, please. Developer tooling, right? Is there a current state of developer tooling that you picture you can paint us? And is there anything coming from we can look forward to coming from the React core team as far as developer tooling goes?
Sorry, one sec. I have an alarm coming.
Yeah.
I have an alarm that tells me to drink water every once in a while. So again, regarding the developer tooling, I guess like as for the current state, we rewrote React DevTools a few years ago. So I think like that's in a pretty good state, and there's like a bunch of features we still add into it. I think we haven't really talked about it. Like I don't think we even posted the blog post about this, but it's actually like I think it's a pretty big deal that fast refresh is now like an official part of React, and that like if you're not familiar, it's basically like the thing that lets you edit code and see changes in a running app without losing state, without like refreshing all the time. And it's integrated, it's officially supported. That's the difference with the solutions we had before, which were like super hacky and broke all the time. But fast refresh is actually like officially supported by Create React App, Next.js. There's a Gatsby integration coming, I think, like in next major as a default. So I think it's a pretty big step that this is just part of React now.
Very cool.
And for like, I guess, again, as I said, like server components is our is like part of our thinking about what the future of like React frameworks looks like. And the big motivation there is just let's not ship as much code to the client. And although I know a lot of people think that like, oh, let's just make React smaller, but like if you imagine a curve of like how your app grows, like the size of your app grows as you add features. Like if we just make React smaller, it's just this curve just goes down a little bit. It doesn't change the shape of the curve. And we want to change the shape of the curve. We want to make it easier to add features without adding bundle size. and like server components is a big part of this strategy. So I think like in terms of the future, we'd like to see different frameworks, including like Next.js, Gatsby, like Remix, or like anything else that people are building now. We'd like them to help them integrate server components when they are stable, and just to have this like single way to write data fetching code and like have code split and integrated into React frameworks.
Very cool. Well, if we go to the last slide there, we are done with the questions. Dan, thank you so much for taking the time out of your day and coming to our meetup and answering some of our questions. Do you have a couple of minutes? I've seen the chat go crazy with some questions, and maybe if we pick a couple of them, do you have a couple more minutes for that?
Yeah, I don't have anything else today.
Thank you, Dan. Cool. This is Damien, one of the other organizers. And before I talk, and I'm sure everybody wants to hear me talk, but what we really want to hear is Jeannie talk. So you want to say hi, Jeannie? This is the other of 3 organizers.
Hi.
And the one who really brought you here, and we thank Jeannie very much for that.
I'm the one that reached out to you. Thank you so much for coming. I'm so grateful.
Thank you for inviting.
Dan, it's been fantastic. Like Jeremy said, so I'm David Montero. I have a couple of the questions that I've sort of tried to sort of clean and polish to make it as quick as possible. People are interested, and I think you've talked a lot about it in the server. You know, do you like what Next.js is doing? You know, what the team's doing it. Do you feel that you're going to encompass all that? Do you feel that they can live on their own? Do you see a future for them if you're going to do it? Is there kind of a connection like that?
Yeah, so we do collaborate with Next.js team, but like we don't work on any Next.js specific features. So the scope of this collaboration is just to prove out the low-level pieces that other frameworks can integrate as well, and like any custom setup can integrate as well. So I don't think we intersect in scope, because we work in React itself, and it's just that React itself is the library, and also now like we have more opinions and more knowledge about the architecture, and like server components is like an architectural piece, right? It's not just like an API you call, but it's also how do you integrate that API, and what is the big picture. And like from our side, we imagine that we own some of these low-level pieces, but frameworks like Next.js are the ones who can compose them together in different ways. And like maybe Next like has one opinion about how to do it, maybe like Gatsby or Remix or some other library has like another opinion, and that's totally fine by us. So I don't think there's much talk about like intersecting and stepping onto each other's toes. It's just that we want to share our understanding of the React architecture as an app-wide thing with more frameworks, and let people use them.
Love it. Thank you, Dan. The next question we had, a couple of questions. I mean, you can keep this short if you'd like, or it's up to you. TypeScript, do you like it? Do you not like it? I know it's becoming optional. Do you think that it's going to become something required, as it's kind of required with Angular?
I mean, React as a library doesn't have an opinion on this. And as for like the tooling, like I think it would be there would be uproar if like Next.js forced you to use TypeScript, or like if like Gatsby or Remix or something else. Like I don't know, maybe there are some TypeScript only frameworks, but I just don't see why that would make sense. As for whether I like it, I don't think it matters. Like I'm like meh. I'm not sure I can say that I like any language like in general. They're okay.
Fair enough. Fair enough. What are your thoughts? Is there anything that you would have liked to have seen in React that you didn't? And is there a story as to why not? And maybe you're okay with it, maybe you're not okay with it. Any stories like that?
You mean like as a React feature, or?
Yeah, was there something you're like, wow, I really wish, I was like, I really want to add that in there, and people are like, nope, sorry, we're not going to do that. That's not our way. And you're like, all right, okay, fine.
Well, I think I kind of touched on that. Like there are things like I think like for me, like the motivation to even work on any of this stuff is just like, again, like I was building this app in like 6 years ago, and React made some things easy, but there were still a bunch of things that were not easy, like data fetching, animations, and I just want them all to be integrated into that one. Like I want to feel like there's this like one theory of everything where it just all connects and it all makes sense together. And I think I just like to, but it's not like I come to Sebastian and say, "Hey, wouldn't it be cool to have animations?" He says, "No." It's that like we all understand that you can't just add features on top and expect them to work cohesively together. You do need to design the whole system for it to make sense, and that takes time. So
Makes a lot of
I think
sense.
I've made my peace with it, that after
Makes
some
sense.
time I will be able to like build that up again, and this time it will make more sense.
Makes sense. So there is something you've mentioned, React Native, and specifically you mentioned React Native for the web, and you said you liked it, and you'd like to see that have moved a little bit faster. Any thoughts on React Native? Anything that you want to tell us as far as stories? Do you like it? Do you prefer the way it does it, where it has its own component? Do you like it that React uses HTML native components? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, so for those who don't know, because it's kind of confusing, like React Native is a thing that lets you write React code for iOS and Android, and so you use their underlying, and like it has abstractions that are like universal, like view or text, which is kind of similar to like div, span, and so on. But it turns out that actually, if you implement the same abstractions on the web, which like map pretty closely to web primitives like div, span, image, then you can have a like a single code base that targets iOS, Android, and the web. But then you can kind of branch out and have platform specific pieces for things that only make sense on the web, or like only make sense on iOS and so on. So it's not like one thing targets everything. It's more that you can share the majority of the code. And so React Native for web is like a third-party project, but its author works at Facebook now. It's Nicholas Gallagher, and Twitter is actually built with React Native for web. But React Native for web specifically is not like completely official, right? It's still like Nicholas's kind of side project, and like we do have some ideas about how that could be a more official thing, but it's just something we haven't like prioritized at this point. So we'll see. I don't know what to add at this point.
No, that's great. We had a great presentation from Jonathan that's over here in the group that belongs to Book of Code, and then we're big fans of it in this group. So we like that. You've said that you like it, or how do you feel about it yourself personally?
Yeah,
React Native.
React Native or React Native for web, because those are two different projects.
You decide what you're going to answer. You're the great Dan.
Yeah. I mean, I think I personally like them both, but like I'm biased that I like all React things. If I don't have to learn like Kotlin or like SwiftUI or something like this, if I just want to make an app that runs on like mobile devices, I personally think it's cool. Like, do you think it's cool? I don't know.
I do.
But I do kind of imagine, like, I like to see that feature where I can also use a single code base and mostly the same abstractions without compromising on the UI quality. And I think like some of these problems are already solved and some are not, but we'll see. But for now, I think like I'm mostly thinking about the core, because even if you have this like this is about this surface area, right? Like how do you target different platforms in a good way? And like for now, like I'm more interested in like how do you even write components, because that's the core part. And then all these things like data fetch and animations, like you do need to figure out how they tie together, and then I think you can kind of apply it to different platforms.
Perfect. Dan, we pretty much, we do have some questions, a lot of them support questions, things like that. Would you do me a favor and fix someone's laptop? The answer is yes. Yes, no problem. You'll come to their house. Thank you for that. Last bit, and every single time that we finish it, we got to make sure with something goofy. How do you like those headphones?
Oh, they're really good.
Fantastic. They sound great. Are we hearing the microphone from there?
Are
we hearing the microphone from the headset, or do you have like a microphone somewhere else? Are we hearing those as a microphone?
I'm actually not sure. No, I think that's just MacBook microphone, because it's just how I set up my Zoom, because it wasn't working before with Bluetooth for some reason.
Fantastic. Dan, you would make a fantastic reviewer, clearly, as I will now go out and buy them and get rid of these 20-year-old now headsets. So I really appreciate it. This is back when I was calling for you directly, Line. Thank you very much. Jeannie, you want to say the last words before we give away a license and thank?
I wanted to ask, but I feel like it's stupid compared to the other questions now.
Oh, I've already said the stupid questions, so the only thing left is smart questions. Go ahead.
Mine was just based on like interviews and stuff that I've had recently. It was how you would say what is the difference between like a junior, mid, or senior React person. How would I know what spot I am in?
Other than first name being Dan.
Yes, other than that.
Or starting with a D.
I'm not sure I'm that good at React anymore, because I haven't really written much React code for a while. So you might actually know the landscape better. But I think the question is tricky, because like there's like that's like in general there's like a notion of like React interview, and like I've looked at some of those, and it's just like I don't know, I may not I have no idea what these people like want me to. It's like I think like a lot of those lists are of like React interview questions are really weird. So I like in general the notion of like a React like position of like a React developer, like I don't know what it means exactly, because like I would expect a good developer to be able to learn React. And so when like I could maybe answer a more general question of like how do you like how I would mean by like a junior and a senior. And again, I'm not necessarily like a fan of those terms, but it is true that like some people are more experienced than like other people, and that's also a fact. And like they usually have different responsibilities. But I think but at least like at Facebook, the way it works is you like in more senior roles, it's like maybe in more we don't hire like people who just like learn programming. So like we don't hire completely junior people. We hire like people with like 3 years of experience at least. But like in those roles, we generally expect that you can implement the feature with some guidance. You can like mostly like reason about like some feature on your own, and like you can fix bugs and do this kind of stuff. And then for like a level higher, it's like when you can kind of set the direction for like when you can own a piece of the app or like the thing you're working on, and like develop expertise in it, and kind of help other people understand it and help mentor newer people, and kind of set direction for what people should like, what do you think is worth doing, and actually be able to convince people to do it. And then like a level higher is like when you sort of like solving interpersonal conflicts, and when you can make sure that the thing that is being built is actually the right thing to build. And when you like if there are multiple teams and they have like different visions or like misalignment or something, like you find those problems and like you bring people together, kind of connect them, and like help them do work on the correct thing and like track that. And so I think it's it's like it kind of zooms out of code a little bit into interpersonal and into architectural. So like, but you still need to like, it's not a job where you just draw graphs. Like you can, he's still like, it's still very technical. But as for like React developers, I guess that kind of scopes it down to like developing applications, right? And like in that sense, I think like a more junior person is probably the one who can like add some features to the code base. They can, I don't know, like implement some new flow, figure with some guidance. And like for more senior people, I would expect that they can maybe be able to pick, kind of reason through like the way they choose to pick a solution, or or decide to make their own, and how they can, like when they use a library, I would expect them to understand what the library is doing, and not just like look at the API, but have a rough idea of how that library works. And like if they had to, they would be able to like write something similar themselves. So I think that's kind of the difference that I would expect.
So would you say that, wait, can you hear me? Oh, would you say that basically it feels like in order to be past junior, it's like not even, it's just on experience. There's nothing you can literally do. Like you just have to just be there longer doing React kind of to get a feel for it.
I wouldn't say that. I think like being longer does not mean you're gaining experience. Past the like if you do the same thing over like I know like people who are more kind of experienced and they've been programming for like 3 or 4 years than some people who've been programming for like 15 years. It just depends on like if you get out of your comfort zone, or if you're being told implement this thing and you just like implement the ticket. And I think it's a part of this is just like doing different problem, like solving different kinds of problems, and so you get kind of a breadth of experience, and also like just making mistakes, learning from those mistakes. And then like being a like kind of a mentor, like seeing what, like when newer people are brought on board, like teaching them to solve problems. I guess there's more problem solving. Like that's one thing that you would expect somebody senior to be able to do, is like to break a complex problem apart into smaller ones and then figure out the strategy for the smaller ones. But if you, in terms of like actions, I think it's just going out to get out of your comfort zone, like doing the kind of like implementing things you didn't originally like plan to implement, mentoring people, learning new things, and just gonna get it, and then doing the people stuff, right? Like solving conflicts, seeing when the thing we're building doesn't make sense, like you need to like have some kind of alignment between different people and stuff like this.
That makes sense. Thank you.
Thanks for asking. It's a good question.
Dan, I want to speak to everybody here that to thank you very much for this time, for your time. Thank you very much. I know you're on the other side of the pond, as they say here in America. I believe that's the saying. Maybe I'm not. My English is my third language, so please excuse me if I didn't say it right. I want to thank you very much. Thank everybody. This has been tremendous. Thank you, Jeremy, for a fantastic moderation. And thank you, everybody. We'll be here every single Tuesday, first Tuesday of the month, last Tuesday of the month. Dan, you are welcome. I know that we meet around the time that you are in the middle of your sleep at night, but you're still welcome, even if that's so a couple of pints, as you guys say over there, and then you'll be fine to go. So you'll see that you'll have no problems with that. We have a couple of different questions, but I think it's enough for Mr. Dan to go. I know that some of you guys are probably would like to not win this raffle that we have, and instead ask Dan a million questions. I definitely would, but I think we have to wrap it up at one point. So if you guys want to join me, Dan, you're welcome to do so. What we have here is three licenses, because it's a big, huge presentation that Dan has awarded us. So we have 3 licenses for JetBrains, any PHP Storm, WebStorm, anything that you prefer. React, not React, some of the other products as well. You're welcome to it. So if you want to join me at, again, Dan, you can join us as well. Win.floridajs.com. You can as well, Jeannie. And then we'll give away these